All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Talk Openly. I'm Jac. This is Daniel.
Hi, everybody.
We're really glad that you're joining us tonight. And I know for myself, it's really, really important for me to be able to have this space with Daniel just to talk about the Dharma. And I hope it's useful for everyone else too.
For sure. I feel the same way, Jac. Even if no one else ever paid any attention to us, it's really meaningful, right? Like for me personally, I was just reflecting on it today, how this show, tonight's show, how much just contemplating it, just thinking about it before the show, really it opened something up, and I was like, wow, ooh, I hadn't thought about it like that, So and that happens every time, and then there's your friendship, and like what happens between us, and that's amazing. I love it.
It is. It's so great. Yeah, well, that's the power of Sangha. One, that Lama's holding us accountable to be thinking about the Dharma and meditating on it, and then two, that we've got friends. We can rely on each other.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful.
You're a good friend, Jac. Thank you.
You're a good friend too, Daniel. Well, we're going to be talking about a really, really potent subject tonight. We've got some love and attachment, and that our attachments will always kind of, in some way, have to end. Our relationships, our connections. So we're going to talk a little bit about sticky attachment, what that is, healthy love, all the good things. But first I want to kind of check with you, how's your week? How's your practice? I'd love to hear about that.
My week's good. It's been really enjoyable. I've been with my kids. They've been, we've been hanging out, having a good time, and went to my daughter's orchestra recital yesterday. She had minimized how she was like, oh, it's not a big deal, and nothing's happening, nothing. And then we get there and it's a huge crowd, and she's all dolled up, and like they played great, and it was a lovely evening.
That's nice.
Yeah, that was really cool. It kind of surprised me. And then my practice is really good. It's nice and stable. I took a cue from you. I forget exactly how you put it. Something to the effect of like it's non-negotiable, right?
Mm-hmm.
My meditation is non-negotiable, and that's been true. So I've been really steadily sitting at least once in the morning. And what's really great is, I've brought in a little bit of the tantric practices by doing the refuge ceremony. So there was that was a recommendation by Lama. So when you take refuge, there's this whole ceremony, and that's essentially like a sadhana, right? Like a practice. And I've been really enjoying watching it deepen, as I do it, and the meanings sort of grow. I love that. It's just like watching like a little plant or something.
Yeah.
It's just more magical, I think.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so I've incorporated that into my daily practice, doing the refuge practice along with my meditation, and I found it to be quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you say that. I love that you say that about how doing the tantric practices repeatedly, like there's this way that it gets deeper, and there's so much nuance. And I find for myself that the more I learn about Dharma and study and meditate, this is James, by the way, my kitty. It's so funny that he's decided to join us tonight.
How appropriate. Talk about love.
I know. But there's just this quality of, well, I guess you could say, like kind of like the metaphor of like a fine aged wine, where it becomes more complex. And my relationship to the tantric practice, and to, you know, the deities, or the mandala, or the, you know, the types of qualities or characteristics that I'm working on developing. There's this relationship, really, it's relationship. And I've noticed too that, you know, first starting out with a new practice, I'm really excited, you know, kind of like a new relationship where it's like, ooh, what's this? What's all these like
Yeah.
feelings, and like,
Ooh.
this is so fun and exciting. And then, you know, after maybe like a month of doing it, you know, there's a way that I get kind of stalled a little bit. But I think, you know, I kind of always have a little bit of a mind that I need to be shook up and see new things and try new things. But that's really good for me to see and observe and be like, well, what is that? And why don't I want to like just be here with this thing that I'm doing consistently? And so there's this way that it's like, oh, I'm kind of getting serious, you know, like I'm getting serious with my practice by saying, okay, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit less revved up about this one practice, but I'm coming back to it because I'm in relationship with it. And so that is really, I think, where the deepening happens for me, is because I'm able to move beyond that kind of just like new relationship energy. You know, that
It is just like that, isn't it? New relationship energy, and then there's sort of maybe a little bit of you know, it's less thrilling perhaps for a period, and then if you stay the course and maintain and, you know, deepen the relationship, then something fruits out of it, you know, something good comes out of it. But you can't do it for the rewards, right? You can't go in there expecting to get something out of it. That's one of the things that I definitely recognize in my practice. In fact, I was sitting here this morning. I was kind of sitting there. I was like, oh, well, what am I doing here? You know, you know, like I want something out of it, and then I was like, no, because if you want something out of it, you're not going to get it, right? Like
yeah.
just do the practice, right? It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think there's a way that, you know, maybe as like an antidote, we can motivate ourselves by reminding us of like, you know, whatever kind of qualities we're trying to develop. And so in some way there's like, okay, yes, I do want that, you know, and I'm setting my sights on that. And this is why I'm, you know, one reason why I'm doing the practice. But I think that has to do sometimes, yeah, with maybe attachment, you know,
Yeah. Oh
where it's
yeah.
like, yeah, because when I get in that mindset of really wanting something out of my meditation, which I find that pretty often, yeah, just it always ties back to the 8 worldly concerns, you know, when I'm having that kind of like pull to be like, oh, but I just want to feel like fucking calm right now. Like, why
Right.
can't I feel calm? Like, I
Yeah.
want to feel pleasure in my meditation, right? Which is like, that's one of the 8 worldly concerns. And of course, you know, we do and can and will experience, you know, deep blissful pleasure from meditative practice. Um, but having that be the reason for my doing it just leads to kind of like an impoverished mindset, right? Because it's kind of
Yeah.
like a hungry ghost mindset where
Yeah,
it's like,
it's frustrating.
I want, but I can't
Right.
like get it. Yeah.
Nope. There's nothing to get, right? And so
Yeah.
like yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. You know,
Yeah.
like the more that I strive to obtain or get, the sort of it's like backward steps, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I find there's like this way that accepting where I'm at while also recognizing that, you know, I have progress to make and can move forward is really helpful. And yeah, it's like this humbling quality of like,
It is.
hey, listen, you're sitting right now in the mind that you have, and guess what? It's crazy, it's chaotic, and it's not peaceful. And adding on top of it that like, oh, I just want to get to that like good feeling. It's not helping, and it's not actually going to get that good feeling.
Yeah.
And actually it's like, it's really tied to my pride that like, I think I should be capable of doing it at that level all of the time,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. For
Uh,
sure. Mm. Letting go of pride through meditation. It's a work in progress, right? It's going to take a
yeah.
while.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, well,
Tell me about your pride. Like, how are things for you? What's going on?
I'm definitely going to talk more in detail about some stuff that's been happening over the last week, related to my cat. I'm going to talk about that in terms of attachment a little bit later on. My cat has been unwell, doing okay now, but that's kind of like the majority of what has been taking up my energy. Um, but just a quick little fun side note is that it's been snowing heavily
Nice.
here,
Oh yeah, good stuff.
which is so fun. So for those of you who don't know, I'm up in the Seattle area, and I live in Kingston, which is a very kind of like rural place, and I also work in Seattle, so I'm in between these two spaces, which is kind of fun. But both, it's just been heavy snow, and it's been so lovely.
Mm.
So yeah, I woke up this morning and everything's just blanketed in snow, and um I almost didn't go into work, right? Because I was just like, I really just want to be home and cozy
Yeah.
and like
Oh,
like have, just coffee all day and
oh my God,
um
there is really nothing. There's nothing better than heavy, freshly fallen snow, and especially if it's still lightly snowing, you know. It's
yeah,
actually, you know, if you think about it, snowfall like that, as enjoyable as it is a bit like meditation, right? In the sense that you want, like, actually what you want is this pristine snow, and it's quiet, right? Like it dampens the noise, and like everything
yeah,
becomes like nice and clean and clear. And then within about, an hour or two, it's all gray and
yeah,
sludgy and iced over, and you're complaining about it,
yep,
all that. But man, is it beautiful during that, like that sweet moment right after it's fallen. Ah, it's
right.
gorgeous. I'm jealous. I'm really jealous. I've lived in the snow a decent amount of my life, and I've always enjoyed it, like all aspects of it, even the sludge and all that nonsense.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm,
I
I'm
can't
very,
say I've
I'm
gotten
happy
there
for you.
yet. Yeah, so it's been fun. It's definitely felt like winter time, and it's nothing that I've experienced because I, grew up in Southern California and then lived in Sacramento for a long time, and so it's a big change, but
Oh, that's
I
so
love it.
nice. Do you have all the right gear for it?
I've got some gear. I've got some good
Okay.
gear.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. You
I,
got
I,
boots.
I I've got boots. I've got those like snow tracks.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you've been to Seattle, but when I get to the ferry dock, to get to work, I have to go up this like massive hill. So I walk, I get some exercise in to get to work. And but on a day that's snowy and icy, that's a little intimidating. So yeah, I've gotten the strap things that go over your boots that give you some traction, but
Those are helpful.
yeah, it was super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's been kind of just a fun little Pacific Northwest experience.
Oh, I'm happy for you. That's a nice experience, especially for someone who hasn't spent a lot of time in it.
Yeah, yeah. No, thanks. Yeah, but I did see it was how kind of like attachment arose in that moment, where it was like I could really see myself, how it made it really hard to enjoy what was happening, because I had this like strong wish to just stay home. And that was what I was attached to, right? Is like,
Mm,
I just
mhm.
want to stay home. I want to be under like the
Oh,
covers. I want to have the cat on me. I want to
yeah.
hang out with my partner. And all of it was about me. It's like, I want this experience, right? Um, but I have the responsibility of, going to the hospital and meeting with people and running groups and whatnot. And when I'm not there, that means that they don't get that. And, you know, I'm not the only person that they meet with. So kind of, you know, take me down a notch of the whatever my pride that like the place is gonna run if I'm there or not, you know.
Sure, sure.
But it was really, I could feel that me wanting that so strongly, this thing that like, you know, ultimately I knew I couldn't really have, really made me like upset. Like I was just kind of like grumpy. And instead, when I could have like been just enjoying the
Right.
time that I did have, you know?
Yep. Yep.
And so I saw it happening. Like I was really kind of watching my mind as this was happening and like trying to pull myself back a little bit. And then, you know, once I got to Seattle, it was like, okay, I can enjoy this. This is,
Right.
you know, this winter is happening here too.
Yeah.
It was just interesting to watch.
It feels good to drop the attachments. Once you see it happening, you see kind of, like you said, you were watching it, you saw it happening, and then you're like, you know what's going on, and then you can't force it, but you know, like just awareness of it, you sort of with a little bit of time, maybe a ferry ride,
Mhm.
yeah, and then all of a sudden it sort of self-liberates, right? It dissolves, and you move on to your day, and things can be okay.
Right. And actually, you know, I had a great day at work, you know, and was able to make some
Nice.
good connections. And so it was like, okay, yeah, you know, I did all the things. Wonderful.
Yeah, nice. I'm glad you didn't cave in, because sometimes what happens too is like we do actually cave into it, right? And call in, and then we might do something like we might lie, like, oh, I'm not feeling so
Right.
good. And then, well, of course, what would happen is there would be some sense of like, I'm not just talking about lying, but like even just sort of that feeling of like, oh, I'm supposed to be at work, but I'm sort of like, everybody else is there working and doing what they need to do and
Right.
contributing to society, and I'm here, and it is nice to be with my partner and my cat, and it is warm and it is nice outside, but at some point, like that sort of that guilty feeling
Yeah.
or the pressure of the shooting on yourself, something would,
Mhm.
so kind of, you know, it's not what you think it would be.
Right.
The thing that you're attached to is not the thing that you would be getting.
Right. It's
Right.
tainted. It's
It's
very, yeah,
tainted.
it's
It's got
tainted.
some gray sludge and salt in it already.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that was actually something that that helped me kind of turn my mind around and be like, you know what, just go to work. Was that,
Yeah,
you know, I was thinking about that feeling of like, oh, this feels bad.
that's right.
So
Yeah,
I think that's kind of when a Shanti Deva type approach is really useful, right?
it
Is
is.
where like we recognize that we're doing something kind of absurd. And it's like, listen, just do it, you know, just do the thing. You know what to do, right?
Yep. Lean in.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, thanks for letting me share a little bit
Oh, it's
about
nice.
week.
I'm visualizing the snow up there now. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. I'll send you a picture after.
Do it, please.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about love and
Yeah.
attachment and loss
Ah.
and
Hmm.
grief.
Yeah.
All
You
the
want to
things.
you want to tell us like maybe why we're talking about it, like how we got here?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think I'm gonna get to tears tonight, but if I do,
Okay.
you know,
I
that's
don't have any tissues, but
yeah, I'll take it through the screen. um yeah, so if you're a friend of mine on Facebook, you may have seen that I've been having some kitty issues this last week with my wonderful friend James the cat, who you just saw on the screen. Um, he's about 12 and a half years old, so you know, not a young cat, an elderly cat. Um, and last week, last Sunday, so not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, he just kind of stopped eating. He just stopped eating and drinking water. Um, and he's never done that before. Like, you know, he's had times where maybe his appetite's changed a little bit, or he kind of doesn't like a certain food randomly. But this was, I think, the first time that he's really just been done. And he started like spitting up a lot and just kind of, he was obviously sick.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of where the attachment story begins, right? Well, of course it begins when I first make contact with James, right, and become buddies. But in terms of, this recent story, where I think kind of sticky attachment happens. And by sticky attachment, I mean an attachment to something impermanent, thinking that it's permanent and really believing that I can keep it that way.
Yeah.
And so of course that's going to bring suffering. So I think the sticky attachment began when I started noticing the illness, and my immediate thought was just like, well, it's going to go away. It's just going to go away, because that was what I wanted, was like, well, no, he just needs to be okay, and he's going to be okay. And time went on, he didn't get any better. He kept not eating, kept spitting up. So ended up taking him to the vet, and long story short, he needed to be hospitalized over the weekend, and they did a whole bunch of tests and, x-rays and all these things, very expensive, of course, and mostly inconclusive, right?
They often are.
They often are. And so it just was this kind of like roller coaster, right, of highs and lows, where it was like, I'd get, I was in the vet room the first time, and the vet comes in and she tells me, we think what might be happening is that he got into this flower bouquet that your friend had when her grandma passed. So my roommate got a bouquet, and apparently it had lilies in it, which I didn't realize are highly toxic to cats.
No kidding.
No kidding, right? I didn't know that. And so the vet is, kind of describing, like, we think it might be lily toxicity. This is really bad. That means that kidney failure can happen like anytime, right?
Yeah.
So of course, for the next 15 minutes, as they're doing the tests and I'm alone in a room, it's awful, right? It's just like so horrible. And I'm thinking, like, how could I not know that? Like, the whole I should have known that was going to be a problem. I even remember thinking, like, oh, I should look up if these flowers are a problem for cats. And so of course that was happening in my mind, where it was like wishing that you could go back, when it's like, okay, it's not possible.
Right.
It's not possible. And then of course the high when the vet comes back with the lab results and says, guess what? The labs are totally normal. So it must not be lily toxicity. So that was a big high, but then the low the next day was that he wasn't improving. And they said if he wasn't improving or seemed more lethargic, which that was the case, you got to take him in. So anyways, it was just all of this back and forth. And I think that is the samsaric roller coaster of attachment that we're actually in all day, every day. But it's with these moments that are really acutely intense, that, at least for myself, that I can really see it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking, just on a regular day, these highs and lows of like, ooh, I made that green light. And then, oh, shit, the grocery store's, packed. And, like all these highs and lows are like, oh, yes, I got the last cauliflower pizza, and then like, oh, damn it, the line's long,
Right.
And so it's just these highs and lows. And all of that is based around attachment to getting what I want and aversion to, getting what I don't want. And it's exhausting. So that's kind of, what was happening. Fortunately, he's okay now. He's eating, drinking water. He's more himself.
Go James,
Yeah, seriously.
got this, bro.
But the thing that was, I think, really important for me in all of this is to recognize and accept that, okay, he seems okay right now, and he is going to die. He is going to die. And when I used to have those thoughts, or he'd be kind of, sick or have a UTI or whatever, I would just be like, no, we're not thinking that.
Yeah.
Because he's my best friend. I don't want that. But what's been so incredible for me in this, is that I really allowed myself to feel.
Yeah.
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 So not just when those highs would come, but the lows. And I have not been able to do that yet. And I owe it all to my meditation practice.
Absolutely.
And the growth that has come out from that. Being able to sit with like deep sadness, and like kind of basically like anticipatory grief, it really helped me have some compassion for myself when I'm wrapped up with attachment, and also wrapped up with love, right? Because I think love is incredibly healthy. So it's not something that I need to reject. But to recognize, like, okay, and with love, I'm going to have loss. That's the other side of it.
Yeah.
And so feel it, and feel it, as really, or realistically and present as I can, rather than shunning it.
Yeah.
So it was hard. It's been a really hard weekend, but it's also been kind of beautiful, I have to say.
Yeah, it's almost like a good like a good cry out session, in the sense of the feeling that you have afterward is sort of like just an okayness with it, right? Like where you're like, yeah, right, that is how it is, and I'm okay, right? You have to move some energy,
Yeah.
around it, but yeah, that being present, with those feelings, because they're there all the time, and we kind of ignore, right? Like we do all kinds of things to either ignore the bad feelings, the dissatisfaction or unhappiness with it, or we try to sort of gloss over things, like I had an experience fairly recently that was kind of like that. Throughout my life, I've actually given a decent amount of time, thought on a regular basis to sort of mortality, my own and everybody around me. And I've even, sat and like visualized, like, okay, what would it be like if all these people, this person or that person was getting sick or dying or whatever. And I've always recognized, like, yeah, sometimes I can feel a little bit of something. I've always recognized that there's this sort of like, that's not real, like I'm thinking about it, but I'm not feeling it,
Yeah.
like yeah, there's something moving, but there's not much, right? I'm just sort of like, okay, yeah, I would be like, okay, I sort of like, I play this little game of talking through it all, but it's not very real. It doesn't feel, it's not like embodied. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine recently, and they were sort of, I don't know, they were poking me a little bit about my beliefs, and I was like, yeah, I really really want to be, I just want to done with my suffering and everybody else's, and I think that I'm on a path to do this, and da 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 da. And I was, feeling quite smug and satisfied, which is, it's awful when this happens, but then they were, because I was like, yeah, I've got this, I'm going to do this thing, And then they asked me a very simple question. They said like, okay, well, what are you going to do when so and so your daughter dies?
Mhm.
Period. Just like straight up, just like, hmm. And I kind of was like, huh? Well, and I answered sort of the way that I do in my own internal sort of monologue. Oh yeah, well, grieve, and sad and everything, but I'll recognize that that's just how it is. And then I moved. I was like, oh, okay, just move on. Like the
Yeah.
ignorance, sort of the blockage, kind of came up in that conversation. I was like, not, like that's it. But then what was weird is I ended up coming home, and it's kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, because all of a sudden I opened myself up. I don't know what happened, but I was open to it. And all of a sudden, it wasn't just like my suffering that I was confronted with. I was, faced with the suffering of all, like everybody losing everybody, right? Like it's going to happen to every one of us that, like if we survive long enough, everyone we know is going to pass. Everybody is going to suffer. They're not just going to die, right? They're going to suffer along the
Right.
way, right?
Right.
And there's going to be pain, and there's going to be heartache, and there's going to be all of that along the way, and then they're going to die, right? Like and it was this very deep, like it hurt. I felt like like in the sort of the mythology or whatever, the when you get the egoic head cut off and trampled on by the god, by the goddess. It was like one of those sessions, but it had everything to do with being present with those emotions, and being and recognizing that whatever sort of mental games I might come up with to protect myself from the pain of like feeling it, it's not going to do it. It's not going to work, right? And no matter what I tell myself about what I'm up to and how I'm going about it, the reality of the situation is when it happens, I'm going to have to go through it the same as everybody else. And that's one of those attachments that I like. It's a deep attachment to sort of my like specialness, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh no, like I'm different, because I haven't had, I'm grateful. So far in life, I haven't had to suffer a tremendous amount of loss, and I haven't had to deal with a lot of grief, bereavement, and all of that. Um, so I have sort of a fantasy about how, oh, I'm special somehow. But then when I really sit with it, I recognize like, no, that's BS, like that's not how it is. And that's tough, right? To recognize that actually I'm in the same boat as everybody else, and
Right.
that I too am going to suffer loss, and will grieve, right? And that hopefully, it's not evasion, right? Like this path that we're on is not about avoiding um, this pain and suffering, right?
Exactly.
Not
Yeah.
at all. It's about being present with it, and
Right.
recognizing it as a facet of life.
Right. Yeah. And well, something that was really present with me the last few days um, was that, you know, when I'm able to really be present with those deep feelings, and, whether like some fear or sorrow, um, and I'm able to continue with my meditation and apply the Dharma, that actually suffering is kind of, in some ways, a portal. It's a door.
Mm.
It's and if we allow it to, rather than rejecting, or the opposite, which is like clinging, clinging to hope, right? That it's
Yeah.
not, I'm not going to have loss,
Yeah.
or the hope that when I do have loss, I'm going to be fine,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so if I'm not clinging to that, or I'm not rejecting, there's this way that I can start to see some cracks in the edifice,
That's right.
that I'm putting up all day, every day. And it's horrible, but I think that it's a horrible feeling, right? But I think that loss um, has that way of just bringing me into presence more than anything I can think of.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking too about, like breakups that I've had,
Hmm.
where it's like it can be this such a potent moment of like, oh, right, we're constantly in transition. This is just one huge one, right? But the transition is happening every second of every day. And so it has this real potent power to remind us of that, to be like, hey, wake up, like,
Yeah.
wait, this is happening. And so I think of, that Lojong slogan, be grateful to everyone. I also think, we can add, be grateful to everyone and everything, including all of our losses.
Yeah.
Because, uh, yeah, it's just that is such a teacher to be like, oh yeah, here you are. This is it. This is
Yeah.
samsara. This is
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
heavy,
Exactly.
heavy.
This is what you've been holding on to. It's funny, Jack, when you had asked about bringing up, having this as the topic, and I was like, I was on board, but at first I have to admit, I sort of foolishly, I was like, well, what am I attached to, right? Like, I don't know, like I don't feel very attached to things, and in fact, I've always sort of thought like, so I grew up moving around a lot, and sort of the lesson was don't get attached, right? From a very young age, don't get attached to anybody or anything. Like it doesn't matter what it is, and so it was both drilled into me and just sort of observationally it was true in my life. Like I'd have friends, and then I'd have to move somewhere. Those friends would be gone, make new friends, whatever, all of that kind of stuff. And so, and then my family, we have this sort of tendency, we have this like superpower, so to speak, of being able to very cleanly cut, right? Like and push away. So aversion, if you will, like a breakup or whatever. Okay, fine, done, right? Dog dies. Loved. I love I love my dog. I love all my dogs. Like love them, right? But then when they die, I'm like, okay, I have my moment of grief and sadness and tears and all of that. But then I'm like, okay, all right, move on. Like it's okay. And so like I've always thought like, well, yeah, that's like the strength of non-attachment. But it's sort of like somebody pointed out to me one time, they're like, it's almost like you're sort of like attached to your conceptual non-attachment, like like that somehow that's not serving you. And I reflected on that, and I realized like, yeah, that's actually true, right? Like I like there's this sense of like I have a concept or a thought about not being attached. But when I really started looking at it, like, and I'm really grateful to you for bringing this up, because I was like, I started making a catalog. I was like, first I thought, well, how would I discover what I'm attached to? Well, how would I know what, like, and I was like, oh, like when I'm really angry or sad, when it's not there, when I can't have it or whatever, when it changes, when that creates like some suffering, right? Then that's sort of a thing. So I started like making a little catalog of all the things that I was sort of attached to. And I don't think that it necessarily showed up as people and things, because whatever, it's just not sort of the way that it presents itself for me. But definitely there's a lot of things, including stupid ideas and beliefs about myself and the world around me, that I'm terribly attached to, And as far as it goes, like with people and even maybe with animals, but definitely with people, one thing that I recognize is this relationship between love and attachment, that I so am attached to not having other people attached to me. Like I don't like people
Sure.
I don't
Yeah.
like people depending on me, because I know that I know I'm gonna go away. I know things are gonna change. And so I really don't like when people have this sort of attachment. Oh, I need to be a certain way and so that they can be happy or whatever. And so like even that I sort of like I push away. And I recognize that there's this sort of like, because at the end of the day, like if we were in loving relationships, we're present, very present, right? And actively engaged in it, because it's so precious, because it is happening right now. It's not going to happen later, right? So like we want to be there now, and how like this sort of fear around developing attachments actually, I think, has in some sense made me less loving. right?
Mhm.
Like not as loving as I could be if I'm more in tune with those emotions, right? With those feelings that come up. I think that actually sort of engenders or leads to a cultivation of love, right? Like if we can be in touch with those feelings. But instead there's this, like, I recognize this sort of like this power of like, nope, like kind of blocking it off, like not gonna happen. I'm not gonna let you get attached, and I'm not gonna get attached to you, right? Like not gonna happen. And so, and I've always like, I would think that leads to freedom. That makes, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. That's how to be in this world, because nothing's gonna bring me pain, screw you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no one's getting attached here. I'm like WD-40 all over me or something, like not gonna happen. But that's foolish, right? That's a different type of attachment to my delusion and to my misconception about things, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, actually, when we really contemplate this in a very serious way, when we meditate, when we bring it in and sit with it, as we were talking about, um, then all of a sudden we can see that, like love, true love, like for another being, that it's that's it, not it either. It's not this pushing away. It's not this rejection of even their what looks like their attachments to us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I so appreciate what you're saying. I mean, it really reminds me so much. We come to in these conversations, I think, to that core concept in our tradition, which is that, in everything we're finding a middle way. And so it's interesting because I think, I in conversation with you, I've recognized in myself that I tend more towards that kind of like strong attachment, or that like tendency to reify, to really feel like there's got to be something real and solid, that I can rely on. There's got to be stable ground somewhere, right?
Yep.
And so then it's like, okay, in my relationship with my cat, right? Because that's going to be forever.
Of course.
Right. But
Yeah.
then with you, like, you're describing this tendency to kind of be more on the other side of that extreme, which is like maybe more of like a rejecting or nihilism, kind of like,
Yeah.
we're just not even going to go there because none of it's real anyways. So like,
That's
why
right.
even get into it?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's just so beautiful how it's like the middle way, the middle path is like just recognizing that those reactions are coming out of like the deep trauma that we
Yeah.
experience of samsara,
That's
right?
right.
We're
Exactly.
we're just here getting like just like tossed around because we have no idea like that this suffering that we're experiencing actually does have there's a path out of it. And so, instead of, because we don't know about that path, that I'm just discovering it right in my life, I'm going down that tendency to really try and see things as solid. And what suffering does that bring me is that, when it hits me that something is not solid, it feels like the world is ending in some way. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's the difference between sticky attachment and healthy love. Like the love of a Buddha is moving beyond hope, right? Which is, I think, this really lovely line in one of the sadhanas where it's like beyond hope and beyond fear,
Yeah.
right? So we're moving beyond this belief in the impossible, right? Which that's what I think, what they're saying with hope is that, hope is trying to make something solid, to be like, no, there's something real, oh, love is the real thing, right? So it's moving beyond this kind of like belief that there's something that's solid, right? And then moving beyond fear, which is the belief that, well, nothing's here anyways, so we're all just screwed. So F it. I'm not going to
Right.
engage with any of it. I'm not going
That's
to,
right.
I'm just going to push people away because all of this is fucked and I don't want to be
That's
involved in
right.
it. Right.
Yeah. You're
And
speaking my language now, Jac.
and so both of those are just this reaction to feeling, so out of control.
That's right.
And how kind of lovely it is to know that we don't have to do either of those.
No, we can be hopeless and fearless.
Exactly. I love it. And to know that we can love people, we can love beings.
Yeah.
We can even, love our lives. But to look at them all realistically.
Yeah.
And when we're able to see that, it's just we're at peace, right? Or a Buddha is at peace, because a Buddha sees that all of this is illusory, it's changing. So don't hold on to anything, but also recognize that it's here. So
Yeah.
engage with it, engage with it.
Yep. Don't push it away, Daniel.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
that's such an interesting how it's like, just two sides of the same coin.
Isn't that amazing? Right. I
Yeah.
love that. Like, I love that about our dynamic, right? Between the two of us, that there are these, so like, there's this sort of like, all right, this is one side of the middle. This is the other side of, here's the wall, and this is this side, and this is this side, but it's actually just the same thing. It's actually a response to the same kind. It's just different responses to the same thing. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so like, so I think like for me, like the lesson that I'm sort of kind of getting from it is that to allow for more of what's on the other side, right? Like, a little bit more of that solidity. So for example, in relationships, like romantic partnership kind of thing, I'm like, whoa, there's no relationship here. There's just me, you. That's all that's happening, and whatever happens, right? So like if my partner's like, hey, we need to talk about our relationship and I'm not satisfied and that kind of thing, then I'm like, well, tough shit.
What
That's just,
relationship?
yeah, what are you
relationship?
talking about? I guess I'm fine. I guess you're not fine. So I guess you should just go on down the road, because, right? No, I'm not joking. I know you're laughing, but
No,
like,
I get it.
no. I've thrown away beautiful relationships because of this,
Yeah.
because of it, right? Where I'm just like unwilling, absolutely unwilling to balance it out. I'm just like so like leaning heavy over here, not balanced at all, not in the middle, right? Just like hardcore all the way over there. And I believe I am attached to my rightness in that is the truth and that is how it is and how it should be, right? And I'm just like, well, why doesn't the person on the other side over there get it? Or they must be delusional. They're like, they're like this, they're like that, right? They don't know what's going on. I see something and they don't see it, right? I'm clear-minded and they're delusional.
Yeah, it's such a trip. It's such a trip. Yeah, and it's so funny because I'm thinking about, I've been in relationships where I held on for way too long beyond the expiration date, right? Because I was just like, no, we have to make it work. We can't. Like, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna fucking figure it out. But how like I would just stay in like really toxic, bad relationships. And then I would, blame the kind of ickiness on them. Like, well, they just don't know how to like form a relationship, or they're not willing to work with me on it. And it's like, well, actually, it's just a bad relationship.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So funny. Yeah, so for me, it's like I've got to move into a little bit more to like the emptiness side of things, where it's like it's it's okay. It's like all of this stuff is impermanent, and so if things are shifting, in my relationships or with my cat, that's just what's happening, and so to be open to like, okay, this dynamic is shifting.
Yeah, and if you're heartbroken because your cat is sick and you're worried, and all of that, that's there too.
Yes, definitely.
Right. Like, yeah, like that's that. Okay, here it is. This is grief. Right. Here's tears. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, because otherwise, like there's so much desire to avoid that, right? Like, like to distract from it, right? That's one of the things that's kind of common when we try to help each other cope with grief, to sort of try to distract from you know, like, oh no, let's just go over here. Here's another kitty. Here's a little kitten.
Right.
Look, right? Like, yeah, here's something else to, you know, to get wrapped up in, you know, and you haven't even actually sort of really become present with, you know, what you've already lost, what you just lost, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all these unhealthy coping mechanisms I recognize to
Yeah.
deal with this, right? Like I think that in some sense, it's almost like all of our bad coping mechanisms are about this.
Yeah. Yeah. That we don't want to feel the feelings that we're feeling.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and how amazing it is. Like, I, more than any time, I think in my Dharma training, have I recognized that if I do what Lama tells me to do, you know, if I do what my teacher tells me to do, it's going to transform how I engage with what's happening. Like, it just will. So, about, I think it was like maybe not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, basically, I guess Lama told during the Salum practice, which I think is for refuge students, basically just that we need to do more shamatha. I got that info from Matthew Cruz. I asked him to summarize it for me. And so I took it to heart. I started doing more shamatha. I do 30 minutes in the morning and 30 in the evening.
Nice.
And where I was doing 24 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that started a week before my cat got sick. All right. And I noticed my tendency to want to do that exact thing that you're describing of distract, numb, you know, think about, you know, what I could do in the future to get like another animal like to fill that, you know, hole.
Yeah.
But I needed to do my training because I told myself I have to do more shamatha. That's what Lama told us to do. So I'm going to do more shamatha. And each of those days that my cat was, you know, sick or in the hospital, I would go to the cushion, not wanting to go to the cushion. And yet, sure enough, I think because there was so much happening within me emotionally, my meditation was very charged.
Yeah.
There was like this energy behind it of like, yep, you're
Yep.
you're in reality right now. So you're plugged in, like, get to it, you know? It was amazing.
Yeah.
And so, and I've noticed that too, like when I've had other kind of intense moments, like I had a client last year die by suicide, and the meditation that I did that evening was so powerful, right? Because I
Yep.
was completely transformed, right, by what had happened. And so do my biggest advice, like I just want to grab all my friends and say, don't distract, don't numb
Yeah.
out,
That's right.
engage. You know,
Yes.
if something is happening in your life that is transformational like that,
Yeah.
it hurts, but really
Yeah.
sit with it, because it's incredible, the
Right.
energy that's behind all of that. And you can do it. You're not
Yeah.
going to be destroyed
Right.
by
You can handle
the
it.
feelings and
Yeah.
sensations. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I had the closest person ever to die in my life was my uncle. He died in a plane crash not too long ago, and my brother was there in Iceland. That's where it happened, and he was his, you know, they were best friends and everything, and so he was with the family and with the wife and kids and everything, and he was having, I mean, there was so much energy, right? Because it's this, yeah, well, and it was intense, and he himself was, you know, remaining grounded and present. And there was this moment he told me about that was quite powerful. It stuck with me. He said there was a time when my uncle's wife had to go and view his body, which had been pulled out of a lake, you know,
Yeah.
and so she had to confront it, and she was just absolutely beside herself, as you can imagine. There's all kinds of energy and all kinds of thoughts and feelings going on, and he noticed that she, you know, like he knew that she was going to want to numb, and so he just said, hey, listen, I know, like, this is going to happen. We're going to go down there. I know you want to just, take some, some medication and maybe drink some and do whatever. I know you want to do that because that was the direction. That's what she said. She was like, I can't handle this. I'm not going to do it. And he said, you have to listen to me. You can survive this. You will survive it. And you will be so much better off if you're not numbed and if you are present with it. And even though it was really, really difficult, she told him afterward that was the best advice she ever got.
Wow.
That she was able to, it wasn't, I'm not talking about like finding closure, but the real meaning of what was going on there. Like she got to feel it in the way that we're talking about, right? Not ignoring, not numbing out, not trying to make it comfortable because it ain't comfortable, right? Being there, and we think that we can't do it, right? Something like that. That's like that. I don't know. Like I feel like, oh, I don't know if I could handle that, right? And yet we can. We're all capable, right? The energy is not going to destroy us. And I like what you said about the charge when it comes to like the shamatha practice, because there's this, like when you think about electricity, how there's the negative and positive poles, right? And how in order for electricity to really work, it has to be grounded, right? And so like, to me, sitting on the cushion with it, even though there's a repulsive force, it feels like it, like I can't, that's the energy, right? Now ground it, ground the energy, right? Then that's how you do it. And then all of a sudden it's flowing, right? Then it actually can move and there'll be all kinds of stuff going on, and maybe it won't feel pleasant, but you'll be there with it, right? And it'll be intensely meaningful.
Right. Yeah. And I think, as always too, especially when we're moving with intensity like that, or maybe it's, trauma and trying to work through traumatic events or whatnot, always starting with kindness and self-compassion, because we don't want to enter that space just scared and alone and, maybe even hard on ourselves. We don't want to enter that way. We want to enter that knowing that that we love ourselves,
right?
And that, we're here to support ourselves.
Right.
And that's been another really valuable lesson for me too, is that I'm not engaging with this stuff to punish myself, right? Like I have this kind of masochistic tendency where I'm like, I'm gonna get into all of my shit and like really work on it because I'm hardcore. But that's not coming from a place of love or kindness,
No, we're not doing it to punish ourselves for this world.
Right. Yeah. So always leading with compassion and love and kindness. Yes. Oh, Daniel, my heart feels open and just connected, and I really appreciate the space to be able to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, thank you. It's really really meaningful for me as well. I'm really grateful for the topic and the discussion. It does, it not just like it opens us up, but also like connects us, like because we're all in the same boat.
Yep, most definitely.
Thank you, Jac.
Thank you, Daniel. And thank you everyone for joining us. We will be back next Tuesday. Looking forward to it. And if you celebrate the holidays, happy holidays, and take good care.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.